Hey, this is Anthony Cesari with SuccessForYourSongs.com, and in this video we're going to be talking about two mistakes that a lot of songwriters make when writing the lyrics for their verses. I do use that word mistakes a little bit loosely because, I mean, this is songwriting and it's an art, so you can do whatever you want. But I think you'll see with what I'm going to show you in this video that there are stronger approaches that you can take than what a lot of songwriters do a lot of the time. So let's start off by talking about what those two mistakes are. So the first one is when writing the verses, the idea for the first verse and the second verse will be identical, but the words will just be different, but it's basically saying the same thing. So an example of that might be if you have a love song, let's say it's called I Love You, that's the title, that's what shows up in the chorus, and then the verses for that end up saying the same thing or similar things that don't really advance a story at all. So the verses might list out all the things that you love about this person. The first verse will do that, and then the second verse kind of lists out more things that are just similar, but it's just more of, just kind of adding to the list. Like those things could have also appeared in the first verse, but they just happen to be in the second verse. Just because, maybe you ran out of space in the first verse or something like that. So the idea is the same in each of those verses. So that's kind of the first mistake when writing lyrics for a verse. So the second one is what Pat Pattison in his book, Writing Better Lyrics, refers to as a travelogue. A travelogue being a video about a certain place. So maybe it's a video about Aruba, and Aruba is kind of the element that ties everything together, and the analogy is that the place is similar to what the song title would be. So you have this travelogue, it's about Aruba, and then first it talks about how great the beaches are, and then it stops talking about the beaches, and then it talks about how great the restaurants are, and then it stops talking about the restaurants, and then it starts to talk about how great the hiking is, or something like that. So Aruba is kind of the cover that blankets all those things, but they are separate things. So the analogy is that a lot of songwriters will write a song with a title, and then each verse talks about a different thing that relates back to that title. So for example, you might have a song that's called Life is Good, let's say, and that's your chorus, and that sums up what the song's all about. Then your first verse, you talk about you're in a new relationship and you're feeling really good about that. And then you go into your chorus, life is good. Second verse, now all of a sudden you switch into, let's say, like you got a new job or you won the lotto or something. And then you go into your chorus, life is good. And it has nothing to do with what you talked about in the first verse in the relationship, except that both of those things are making you think that life is good. Again, that is an approach you can take, but generally speaking, you can make that stronger because there's such a disconnect when you take an approach like that. So in both of these things, whether you repeat an idea from first verse to second verse without really changing it, or you do change it, but in this travelogue kind of fashion where it's just totally different, a lot of times you're not making your story in your song as strong as it could be. So with that in mind, I want to talk about what you can do as a strategy to make your verses a little stronger than those two quote-unquote mistakes that we just talked about. So before I talk about that, if you haven't yet subscribed to this YouTube channel to stay updated on our latest songwriting videos, please tap the little subscribe button in the lower right-hand side of the screen and turn on the all notifications so you'll get notified when our latest videos are posted. And also, if you haven't downloaded our latest songwriting cheat sheets, I got a couple of free lyric writing cheat sheets for you in the upper right hand side of the screen, so you can grab those there as well. Okay, so let's look at some examples for what you can do in your verse lyrics. I'm going to show you a few songs from my EP Staring Down a Globe. I'll show you the approach that I used with these, and I'll put a link for that in the upper right hand side of the screen, so that if you want to check out those lyrics in context and hear them in the song, you'll be able to do that. Okay, so the first song is called Color the World with Your Ideas. So I will pause myself here for a second. I'll leave the video up and I'll let you read through the first verse right here and then the second verse right here, so that we can talk about what's said there. All right, so as you read through those lyrics, you can kind of see that the idea for this first verse is that the world is what it is because people make it that way. People have ideas and they contribute them to the world. They, take a risk and contribute those ideas to the world. So a kind of a simple enough idea for this first verse, summed up with the chorus, which is the overall idea for the song, which is color the world with your ideas. And then it's not a huge shift in the second verse, but it's enough to advance the story, which is what we're looking to do here. And that little shift that happens in the second verse, as you read through that, is basically saying that you're the one who can do that, who can change the world and contribute to all the ideas that are in the world. That wasn't in the first verse, but it is in the second. So the ideas are similar, as they should be in a verse because the music's the same and the melody's the same. But it's different enough so that the story does move forward. It's not just a repetition with different words of what happens in the first verse, but there's that extra added element. So it takes to what we knew in the first verse and it adds to it. Now it's, the world is what it is and you can make it that way. So that's one song that does that. Okay, so another song that takes a similar approach is What Time Is It Where You Are? So again, I'll just kind of pause this and let you read through the lyrics for the verses, which are here and here. Okay, so as you read through these lyrics, you can see that in the first verse, you're basically learning that the narrator's, sitting by himself. And in the chorus, you find out that, he's wondering where somebody is. So basically, verse 1 is about being alone and feeling alone. And the second verse does echo that idea initially, but then it gets into the why. So that's the advancement of the story in the second verse. You find out he was in a relationship and she left because she wanted to, fulfill a dream. And you could see that especially in the lyrics towards the end of the song the end of the verse that I have highlighted here. And even that line, engraving footprints on the world, is kind of a reference to the song that we just looked at before this, Color the World with Your Ideas, because there's a line in there. If you remember that from the first verse, those who felt so brave were able to engrave their prints. So that's just kind of a callback to that song. But anyway, the point is that these verses were advanced because now you found out more information that wasn't in the first verse. And it wasn't just a totally different idea in this verse. It was similar, but you just learned a little bit extra that moved that story along. Let's look at one more song where I did this in, again, a slightly different way. This one is Our Love is a Work of Art. So just take a look at the lyrics here. Here's the first verse, and then I'll scroll down to the second. Okay, so in this song, the overall concept is about drawing the parallels between love and art. So in this first verse, it's talking about the initial meeting between two people, and it's comparing that to the inspiration in art, how you're inspired with an idea. So the first verse kind of sums up all that stuff. And then the second verse, which I'll show you in a sec, Then talks about the work that goes into, both a strong relationship and art. So now it's still drawing on the parallels, but it's drawing on a different parallel, not just the thing that starts it off, but the thing that keeps it going. So in that way, it's moving that story along. So here's the second verse where you can see that it does that. So with these three songs, I think you can start to get an idea for how to advance a story from verse to verse. The verses are always, still under the umbrella of the chorus, because the chorus is talking about what the song's about. But now we're seeing a way to just kind of push that story forward in your verses. And you may have heard of this idea of a second verse curse, where you kind of write everything that you want to say in your first verse, and then you may fall into that trap of just saying the same thing again in the second verse. But one thing that's a trick that you can do is sometimes when you've written your verse and you think you've said everything that you want to say, sometimes instead of that verse being the first verse, it could be the second, and then you can have information that leads up to that verse. So maybe if you feel like you've said everything that you want to say, then the first verse can help that second verse be an advancement of the story by giving information that leads up to that second verse. So that could be a little trick for you also if you find yourselves getting stuck with a strategy like this. But hopefully in the three songs that you saw here, it was the same kind of strategy, but with a little bit of a different take on it each time. So hopefully that'll help you figure out how to do this with your own music. If you'd like to hear these songs that we talked about here, I've got a link for that EP that they're on. Also, if you'd like a lot more information for improving your lyric writing, I have got a couple of free cheat sheets for you that you can download by tapping on the screen here. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this YouTube channel to stay updated on our latest songwriting videos, you can tap our logo on the screen for that. Thank you for checking this out.
I'm just sitting here alone.